Also the founder of a company called Clearwax. Clearwax are the manufacturers and developers of the iClearScope wireless endoscope, which we use to record and visualize all the procedures that you see on my YouTube channel. I had a really interesting case here. It was a couple of months ago, but I kind of forgot about it. It was in my archive of many videos to upload. This patient attended back in October, and her main complaints were not hearing loss. She felt hearing was fine, but she felt something in her left ear, and it was very itchy. She advised that a doctor 2 years ago said that she had some dead skin near the entrance of the ear, some possible otitis externa, so prescribed some, I think, otomized spray at the time. But that never really resolved, and it progressively got worse and worse. And so this is the patient's left ear. See, the ear canal itself is pretty clear, the tympanic membrane is fully visible, but just near the entrance, where we are now, there's this really toughened, hardened layer of dead keratin. Straight away you kind of think, oh, is this an external auditory canal cholesteatoma? What is a cholesteatoma? So a cholesteatoma is a build-up, a collection of dead skin, keratin, and that dead skin eventually gets infected. And when it gets infected, it can cause serious damage to the middle ear or outer ear structures. In some cases it can even be life-threatening because it can infect the temporal bone, the skull base, the mastoid bone. It can lead to meningitis. It can lead to erosion of the 7th facial nerve, which can then go give you Bell's palsy, so a droopiness, a loss of sensation on one side of the face. So it can be very, very dangerous, a cholesteatoma. A cholesteatoma is normally spotted in the attic of the eardrum. So the attic of the eardrum is the top part of the eardrum. More specifically, it's the superior posterior part of the eardrum. So the superior and posterior part of the eardrum is the top, and then to the rear of the eardrum. I'm not really going to explain much about the procedure because it's kind of self-explanatory. Well, I'll just recap. This skin is extremely toughened and hard, and you'll see at the end it's almost created like a Grand Canyon of the ear canal, and it's obviously we had to be very gentle and delicate. Fortunately, I didn't cause any trauma, any bleeding or cutting of the ear canal during this procedure, but it was very, very tough indeed. But I will come back to that. So whilst you're watching that, I'll also, because obviously it's relevant, we're talking about a cholesteatoma. So when the eardrum gets sucked in, when it buckles inwards, so it's when it's retracted, that's the medical term. At the top part of the eardrum, so the top rear, you almost get what we call a retraction pocket. And remember, the eardrum itself, it's this layer of keratin, and the outer layer, as it sheds, like any other keratin skin in our body, it sheds and dies and it falls. The ear is very unique. The skin that coats the ear canal and eardrum, as it sheds and dies, it naturally migrates out of the ear in a conveyor belt motion. And that's very important, because if your ear didn't possess that ability to naturally migrate the dead skin that it sheds, your ears would be constantly blocked and full up with dead skin. So the ear's evolved in such a way so that it can naturally expel dead skin from the ear using that conveyor belt motion, and as it does, it typically also expels earwax. But when you've got a retracted eardrum at the top, and you've got an attic, which is what we call an attic retraction, dead skin cells get trapped in that retraction pocket, and it can't migrate. It just collects and it collects, and eventually this dead skin, it starts off a very white colour like normal dead skin, and then it turns into a light brown and a mid-brown and a dark brown and almost like a black colour, and it does resemble the appearance of earwax quite often, but it's really typically hard. It's rock solid, just like what we're doing at the moment. What we're removing here is extremely tough and hard dead skin, and if you ping it, you can actually hear it. It's with an ear hook. If I tap, well, there's no audio, but when I tap it, you can actually hear it ping. Now, if that dead skin doesn't migrate and it just collects, dead skin will actually eventually get infected. And then that's what we call a cholesteatoma. And this dead skin then erodes into the middle ear, at the back of the eardrum, it can cause ossicular necrosis, so erosion of the three ossicles, the smallest bones in the body that attach to the eardrum. And these bones conduct sound, allow the conduction of sound through the outer ear canal, through the eardrum, through the bones, and then they stimulate the organ of hearing, the cochlea. So without those bones, you can't hear through air conduction. So if you're hearing through sound waves traveling through your ear canal, without those bones, you're all more or less completely deaf. Then you've got the mastoid bone, which is the bone behind your pinna, your earlobe. Then you've got the temporal bone, which is higher up, kind of like almost a skull base bone, and that can then get infected. And then you've got the meninges, which is a layer of fluid that kind of almost coats the brain. And if that gets infected, you can get meningitis, so it can be life-threatening. Now, getting an external auditory canal cholesteatoma it's deemed to be quite rare. It's not something we come across on a day-to-day or even on a monthly case. So I've had a couple, I think, and it's a similar concept, but it's as the skin sheds out of the ear canal. So as I said, with the traditional cholesteatoma, skin cells get trapped in the attic of the eardrum. With a external auditory canal cholesteatoma, the skin is migrating, and then at a certain point in the ear canal, it gets trapped. And in this patient, it's at this region. Now, it could be the reason for that, it's difficult to tell, but it could be that this patient, her normal ear anatomy, she's near the entrance, as the skin is migrating, there's always been a crater there, like a trench, and that she could have just been born with that possibly. And then over the years, the skin, it just gets trapped in the crater, it gets trapped, and then it starts eroding the base of the ear canal and the tympanic plate. So this is on the cartilage portion, really. And removing it is extremely tough. Really, as you can see, we're putting a lot of pressure, and the patient did extremely well. I think in a moment, I'm not sure when, but I'm going to put some sodium bicarbonate drops in there. Sodium bicarbonate drops works really well. Here we are. Works really well with dead keratin. And I think I soaked that for about 10 minutes. It wasn't a quick soak, it was for about 10 minutes. Olive oil is not as good with keratin. I would generally recommend olive oil, and I use it a lot in my procedures, as you know, for earwax. But when someone's got dead keratin, I think sodium bicarbonate works much better. It just has a bit of an effect on the keratin. It loosens it a bit more. And again, you're looking at this and it looks quite innocuous. You think, okay, well, it's just a layer of dead skin. But believe you me, it's very difficult to remove. It's not easy. I mean, I've seen some videos of other people on YouTube perform these procedures, and yeah, and it can be quite traumatic. You can see a lot of cuts and bruising and swelling of the ear canal. This patient's awake, there's no local anaesthetic, no general anaesthetic, so the key is try and remove this, but without causing too much discomfort to the patient. And she did experience some discomfort, I'm not going to lie. I think anyone would. The amount of pressure, and I think I was actually standing up when I was doing this, because I was trying to get this view, like, obviously, it's almost like a bird's eye view, this erosion of the ear canal near the entrance, as I think I described it before, as a Grand Canyon. It was so deep. And to peer down on that, I was having to stand up, so I'm looking down into the ear. Normally I'm sitting on my ENT stool and the patient's sitting on the ENT, they've got a couch which can be retracted back into an ENT bed. So it's almost, yeah, I'm still looking through here. Dead keratin is probably one of the most difficult things to remove, it really is. So I'm just trying to manipulate this. And I showed this to an ENT colleague of mine in the video, just to confirm the diagnosis, because it can sometimes be a benign, it could be benign osteoarthritis. And the ENT colleague might have said, no, this was, in their opinion, external auditory canal cholesteatoma, and they're very thankful that we removed it because it saved them the job to do it. And in terms of ongoing treatment for this, so Interconsult said there's no need to kind of really do anything at the moment, just to review the client in a few months and get them to use regularly sodium bicarbonate earwax drops, because it seems like we've caught this in the nick of time. There's no active discharge underneath this, but the patient will need monitoring, but just regular use of sodium bicarbs in the first instance. And if it's chronic, it develops, then they might have to have some sort of surgery to fill in that plug. Again, we're just going to be really careful because we've got the ear hook here, and I still at this stage don't know how deep this this erosion is. It could just be a millimetre deep, so if I put too much pressure with that ear hook and go digging too much, I'm cutting into the flesh, and I don't want to be cutting into anyone's flesh. So obviously it's the first time I've seen the patient. I don't know how deep this erosion is, but you can get a fair idea already. You can see the ear canal is literally a lot more higher up. You can't even see the view of the eardrum here. The endoscope's directly viewing this dead keratin, and the eardrum is literally north. It's so much higher up. Don't worry guys, we're getting there. We're nearing the end. I think this is another couple of minutes, but you'll get a great view afterwards of this erosion. It's just lifting it. I think she was finding this bit naturally a bit uncomfortable, but not enough for me to stop. There we are. It's just, and this plug of keratin was resembling. So obviously that was almost filling in. It was almost like a filler. It was filling in the erosion that it created. And you can start to get an idea of how deep this crater is. Fortunately, this patient doesn't develop too much earwax. Otherwise, again, they'll need to have regular cleaning of their earwax, because this wax will get trapped when the wax is migrating. So here we are. Here's this crater. In terms of the depth of it, well, it's difficult to tell. I didn't measure it, but I'm guessing probably between half a millimetre, probably it might even be a centimetre. It was quite deep, and I'm looking right into it. And the eardrum in a minute, and I tilt the endoscope up. You can just see. It's almost like a Grand Canyon, really, as I described it as before. So what I'm doing now, I'm just mopping up some of this keratin. You can see this keratin already. There's layers of keratin around this crater, and it's ready to migrate into the crater. This is because it's not going to. This piece of keratin on the anterior canal wall will hopefully naturally migrate if I didn't remove it, and it will bypass. It will sidestep the crater. But you can see just beyond the crater, you'll see in a moment, there's some keratin that's literally just going to shed and fall inside this crater. This region here that I'm removing now, that's ready to just migrate into this crater. And what's great, there's no visible signs of active discharge infection. You've probably seen a few of my recent procedures where I've had huge widenings and erosions of the ear canal. You can tell they're really infected, and patients in this respect, there's no sign of active discharge infection. By this stage, I think my hand was a bit tired, because when you're removing that keratin, you haven't put so much force. So both my hands, left hand that's holding the camera. Remember, we don't have a stand. I don't have an assistant holding this camera. This eye clear scope is being held in freestyle in my left hand, and there's no tripod system. You've probably seen images of me holding it, and on the right, my right hand's holding the instrument. So you're continuously operating with two hands. So just some keratin. I just want to mop with as much dead keratin as I can. When I say as much keratin that's nearby to this crater. So this keratin, you can see near to the eardrum, it's more of a fresher layer, it's more white, so it's more stubborn, it's more tough. So we'll leave that's not going to peel anymore. I'll just have a final view at this crater. Yeah, you could probably put a cherry or strawberry inside there. That's how deep it is. And I'm tilting the endoscope up, and then you'll see the base of the ear canal. That's the normal part of the ear canal, that's the eardrum. So you can it gives you some perspective of how deep that was. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thank you. Bye.